Okay. We're going to call the meeting to order today at 2:01, and we'll go ahead and get started. Next, we'll have roll call.
Michael Wood,
Here.
Cesar Rubio, Jacinta Parker,
Here.
James Smith, Vernon Snodderly,
Here.
Nick Jensen,
Here.
Stephen Evans,
Here.
Don Lewis, Angelica Gamboa, Hannah Brady,
Here.
Mohammed Rashid. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we're going to discuss the remote participation due to emergency circumstances. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any members that need to use the remote participation? Anyone online? Oh, okay, thank you. And so next on our agenda, we're going to have public comments. For public comments, even though our agenda states that we would limit the comments to 5 minutes, I'd like to limit the comments to 3 minutes because we have a lot to discuss this afternoon. Do we have any public comments? We'll move on. Thank you. Next is our consent calendar. This is the calendar from our September 12th, 2024 meeting.
I move to approve. I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So next, we're going to motion to recommend the Board of Directors approve the resolution, the service equity analysis of the proposed January 2025 fixed route service change.
And Madam Chair, I'll be taking that item for Stan RTA's staff today. James, would you load up the presentation? And before I get started, I just want to go through this item in 6B to frame it. This discussion is a little bit awkward because it's awkward to talk about an analysis of a service change. Would like to hear normally about the service change itself first and then do the analysis, but you also can't ask for take first the service change and give your motion to your recommendation on it, and then come back and look at whether you think the analysis of it was appropriate. So it feels slightly out of order in the way that we're approaching it, but it's what makes the most sense from the FDA perspective in dealing through the issues. So we are talking about for SEEAC, as a reminder to you, as our group that looks at ADA and all Title VI and civil rights issues, that there are processes that are required of us as a large agency that comes to you all and the public first for comment and review before it goes to the board and to get your insights into it. And as our community liaisons and watchdogs. So we'll start the presentation. Next slide. So we're looking at a service change. So first of all, most of you probably know it as riders and users, but a service change is when a transit agency is making changes in the way its fixed route service is provided. And it's generally done to either deal with improving efficiencies, the quality of service, and where service needs require some adjustment. We are proposing it, and we regularly are doing this as planners, keeping lists of information that we're looking at. and evaluating these things on an ongoing basis and then do it periodically. And we try to group changes to happen in discrete segments. And then why are we doing this change now? We've had two separate issues that have been at the top of our discussion list. One of them has been the Stockton commuter route, Route 80, which we'll talk about a little bit more here and then more in item 6B. We also have talked about the need to extend Route 33 to cross Highway 99 from what I call the west side of the town to further into town. And the need to act on both these changes at this point was exacerbated by a change that was made by Modesto Junior College to eliminate the Pirate Express, which was a shuttle that it has operated for many years, connecting the two campuses and transporting a large number of students every day between the campuses who relied on that shuttle to get them to and from school classes reasonably and efficiently. And when that was canceled in August, we learned about it and have been experiencing tremendous requests coming in from them to try to deal with it. And again, this aligned with two changes we were already looking at. Another point to just make in general about this is that when we're making service changes and we're already into a budget year, it's generally very difficult for any public agency and certainly for our agency to make a budget change, any additions to our budget and to exchange what's budgeted for the year. So you're looking for a zero sum if you can to offset any increased costs with decreases in costs. So that is a behind the scenes piece we're looking at. For this item that you're looking at, though, we're not looking at the cost. We're not looking at whether you like or don't, or we can look at whether you like or don't like the services, but we're really looking at, is there impacts to low income or minority populations that are not reasonable and not reasonably dealt with, just to keep us focused in on it. So let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to walk you through, this is the federally whether it's a fare change or in this case a service change, what operates yes. Okay. Thank you, James.
She'll be on.
Which in this case, it is a major service change. You look, is there a disparate impact? That means, does it inordinately affect minority communities where they either don't get as much of the benefit or they're more directly harmed by the action? Or is it a disproportionate burden? Does it unduly affect low-income communities? Or do they have a markedly less benefit? Again, if the answer is no, then we don't have to do any further action. This analysis is designed to make sure that we are not harming these two special communities. If it's yes, we have an option as an agency to move ahead, because sometimes changes will happen that you can't do it. In a pandemic, if you shut down all your service because transit isn't operating, for instance, everybody is hurt, right? So and you stayed the course because that's what you may have had to do. For an extreme example, or you look at mitigations and opportunities so that the actions you're taking may have a lesser impact. An example that would come from the fare side of the house in doing it, say you need to raise fares, you may ease the speed at which you raise the fare and spread it out over a longer period of time. So it's a more gradual impact and doesn't harm people as much. So those are ways where you can mitigate it. And we'll talk about that more as we go through this item. Next slide, please. So here's the Route 80. It's a commuter route. It's not our typical fixed route that goes around the community with a set schedule and time with frequently picking people up. It has only 4 stops. It leaves the Modesto Transit Center, picks people up at Vintage Fair, where is our park and ride for all of our commuter services. Ace and Bart also go there. We make a stop at the Manteca Transit Center, and then we go to the Stockton Transit Center. This was started in 2020 when we were still had Max and was the city operation. It was based on people wanting to get, one of the limitations of transit in California in particular is we really serve county-wide regions, and it's very hard to make connections across county lines for fixed route riders. So there were a lot of questions and people wanted originally to go to Sacramento. It went as far as Stockton because they could transfer onto buses in Stockton that would take people to Sacramento and not create duplicative service. It provides 3 round trips daily. So it's a very limited service and you have a copy of the Route 80 brochure so you can see where it goes and what it does. Next. So that gives you the background on the route. So again, what we're doing in the service equity analysis is this a major change? Let's measure it. So what we look at in this one, I computed the how many revenue hours we have. Revenue hours and revenue miles are the miles we're in service. So that would be from the moment we leave the Modesto Transit Center till we get to the end of the line. If the bus sits at the end of the line for like 30, 40 minutes waiting to do a return trip, that time doesn't count into the service. It's only when it's in revenue services when you're serving customers. So on an annual basis, it had 1,638 revenue hours. We're proposing 0 hours of service, so it's 100% change. As an agency, we set a threshold of how much of a change in the revenue hours would trigger a major service change. Well, it's 20%, of course. Yes. Similarly with revenue miles, it does about 53,000 scheduled revenue miles a year. 0, 100%. This would be a 25% change in the number of miles. Yes. So we have to do the equity analysis of it. Next slide. And the disparate impact. So on 80, if you had a chance to read through the report, we looked at it 2 ways because a normal fixed route, what you would do is take a look at along the whole distance of your route, the population within a 1/4 mile of the bus service on either side of the route using census data and analyze your ridership. That's a little harder to do with a bus that goes 48 miles and you're on the highway and you're not really stopping and serving communities. So we measured it 2 ways. We looked at it based on that are allowed. One is looking at who rides the bus. And we had done a survey earlier in October to look at what was the survey ridership. And then we looked at based on where the bus stops were, what are the populations served? And we used the one that had the most opportunity for harmful impacts, which was the populations surrounding the bus stops. So based on that, we had a population of 2,200 people within the vicinity of the bus stops. Of them, 1,606 were and it's classified as non-white in general through the American Community Survey. So that's a 73% minority basis. Our threshold for what that is when you look at all of the service provided by StanRTA throughout the county, looking at that 1/4 mile walking shed, we call it, 67% of our bus routes, of the population surrounding our bus routes, are minority. So we're looking at the disparity between what is typical on a bus route and what is typical on this bus route. It's a 6% gap. Our policy says it needs to be more than a 15% gap for it to be a disparate impact finding to do it. Although there is a disparity between how many people are affected here compared to what would be impacted on a typical bus route. It's not a strong enough change that on its own it says that there's a harm or a lack of benefit to minority communities. Next step is disproportionate burden. So same thing, we have the same population that we're dealing with. Only 1,600 of the population were low income, which was a 58% threshold. This, by the way, we use the 200% of federal poverty levels because then if you work in California with any low income communities, it's so expensive to live here. You have to look at the 200% as our standard. But and there is only 38% low income surrounding all of our routes throughout the county. So that's a 20% difference, our threshold of 15. So our finding is this change proposed for the Route 80 has a disproportionate burden on low income populations. So we would be looking for a mitigation if possible to help offset the impact to those communities. Next step. So again, this just summarizes it. So yes, it's a service change. We have to do the analysis. No, it's not an impact to minority communities, but it is to the low income. Next. So then let's look at Route 33 because we deal with each route's separate impact, but as a change that's happening together, we look at them in relationship to each other then. Route 33 was implemented in March 2023. It's a very popular service. Of the 23 routes we operate, it's the 7th most used already. We've had many requests. So when we made the service change with the COA, and we've seen our ridership going up tremendously since we made those changes in March 2023, we pulled our systems together, added new routes and increased service. It's been wildly popular overall. But one thing we did was we eliminated routes that connected us across Highway 99 from this side of the highway over. And the reason we did is the routes were poor performing because the primary route was getting caught up in the Briggsmore traffic, trying to get across the highway. So it wasn't functioning well. And so we made this change, but we've had a tremendous number of people asking for us to come across this way to link up. This linkage, which had already been under study and being requested, happens to connect very well Modesto Junior College campuses as an added benefit with the Pirate Express going away. So that's what we're looking at next. So let's examine this route for any disparities. So first, the major service change, does it qualify? And again, so this is one where it's more of an interesting exercise than you had with 80, where you're just killing the route. We went from 43 minutes per trip to 54 minutes. Because we haven't been running it, I couldn't really do an honest projection of what the annual hours would look like. It's a 20.4% change. Our threshold is 20%. So yes, this just does, as a revenue hour, does qualify. Here, the miles increase is a 27% increase, 25% is our threshold. So yes, so on both counts, it does qualify. So we proceed next to is this a disparate impact on minority populations? On this route, there's about 10,000 people that live along its full corridor. And I measured this with the extended route for what we would be serving there and the impact to them. And yes, it's 74%, minority threshold is 67. It's a 7% difference where we have more impact. But the allowance is 15%, where we can allow that difference between minority and non-minority populations. So this does not meet that test of being a disparate change, adding this extra service to a minority community. Next slide. So we're going to look at disproportionate burdens. And once again, the answer is no. Low-income population is 4,500 in this same threshold, in this same population area. It's 42% of the population compared to what would typically be seen on a route, which is about 38% of the population being low income. An 8% difference. Is the burden 15%? No. So we move on. So the next slide, our findings are that while Route 33 is a major service change and we had to do the analysis does not bear out that the impact of adding extra service would have a negative impact to either group, and it's really not a negative impact in this case. It's, will they have significantly less benefit compared to the rest, to the population writ large? Next steps. So with the conclusions, they did require the analysis. We should consider offsets with Route 80's elimination for low income populations. That's the population most at risk for negative consequences, but not with, on 33, no action is taken. So let's go to the next step. So we take very seriously taking service away. We're an agency that was formed and founded bringing additional service to folks, with trying to eliminate fares and to do as much as we can. So there are some opportunities that we have started working out and have come to us in suggestions from writers, from staff, from some of our bus operators. So we're looking at it. We have the ACE commuter service that goes to and from the ACE station in Lathrop. It operates more services a day. There's one route in the morning that we could route through Manteca and then at Lathrop. And we're trying to coordinate with SJ, RTD, San Joaquin Regional Transit, as well as Manteca Transit, to get their shuttle buses so that they could pick individuals up at those stations and transport them there so they can make the morning connection to ACE. In the afternoon, there's a whole series of connections, and we're also trying to set that up. That's the most viable connection for the regular passengers. There's also another option that's come to our attention that we hadn't been looking at first, which are van pools, which are available through SJCOG and as well through StanCog, where people can sign up and become part of van pools that are commuting back and forth there. StanCog's operating, several hundred of them. Stannis cruises the program so that that can be made available as an option to provide people a little bit more flexible van pool, and they also have the opportunity of forming van pools. Again, I mentioned that Manteca Transit and SJRTD are trying to work with us to bridge this gap and to provide the service. One of the constraints that we have, apart from this analysis, is that we have no commitment from SJRTD to try to bring people to our county. We're just going from our county, bearing the burden. And then these are very limited, but not all riders are everyday riders. But Escalon and Ripon Transit Services do connect to Vintage Fair Mall. And at that point, those riders can connect into our system and make connections. Not the best, but it is another alternative for the infrequent shopper, someone going for a medical appointment. And then there are Amtrak and Greyhound connections, which can be made using our system and moving onward. So that presents the equity analyses. And again, what you're being asked to look at is, and it's written up in the documents, is did we follow the analysis that's required? Do the conclusions we reached seem reasonable based on our adopted policies and based on the process they make us work through? If you have, and of course, we'll take all questions and comments here. This is also well, it's not a public hearing or a formal hearing in any way, but this is a great opportunity to hear from you all, to hear from the community if they have any questions or issues that they would like us to be looking at and exploring as we develop this issue before it goes to the board. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll open it up for you to take questions.
Okay, the floor is now open for any questions or comments from the committee or public.
Um,
Well,
uh,
committee.
oh.
Mohammed?
Yeah, I was wondering, for Route 33, I remember it going down, 9th Street, going up Graphic, going over the overpass, right by the bus, maintenance facility. I feel like it would be better to put Route 33 back on that route. Because it going down all the way like towards Modesto High makes it feel like it's like over an hour ride from Social Security or Valley Mountain Regional Center.
Okay.
Like the outbound and inbound.
Thank you.
Michael? So on both the routes, so 33, I actually would actually prove what Rashid is thinking here. It should go down 9th. It seems that Burns Way make it more of an express bus through the NJC. Make it more specific. So that to me seems like would be a better use of the bus stop there. On the 80, when is is this proposed to be taken effect immediately? Is that what they're looking at?
This would effectively happen the 2nd of January, although the last time the service would run, since it's a Monday through Friday, would be the 27th of December.
It seems to me that unless we have something to replace it, or at least a remedy for it now, we should at least look to extend until we can at least find a remedy, because that's going to put a lot of people that rely on that get to the Stockton, Manteca area pretty much out.
Thank you. Mr. Jensen, you always have comments.
Thank you. So I guess I had a kind of a question. I was wondering if you might be able to walk us through one more time the rationale of the disparate impacts calculation for Route 80 specifically.
Absolutely.
And one specific question I have too
Yes.
is with respect to how you measure the population served by the route,
It's difficult.
Yeah, and I was wondering like what's the actual like distance or like radius that you're using?
We use a quarter, so, and part of this is what the agencies have a little latitude to establish what they use for measuring their population. So Stan RTA consistently goes a quarter mile from where the bus route is on both sides, right? So it's a half mile that we look, and that's because that's generally how far people will walk to catch the bus. So so whether it's this analysis or whether we're analyzing where a route should go or a bus stop should be, we look at is saying we're going to pick people up roughly within a quarter mile. We may get them from further out, but a quarter mile is about as far as most people walk. So that's what we look at using our GIS software to project out around the route. And we do that consistently for every route. Where it becomes difficult that you're pointing out is with the commuter service where you're going miles down the freeway and you're not really, there's no chance to drop off or pick people up along that way. What constitutes the ridership basis for it? And we consulted FTA to get their advice too on what to do with this and to make sure that as a commuter route, this applies because this is generally used as a fixed route analysis, when you're more like the 33 route looks. And FTA's advice was to run it both ways. So we ran it looking at the population of who rode the bus, which we did that week-long survey of bus riders and tried to get every unique rider we could in a week. And while we know that's not perfect, it at least gave us a reasonable knowledge of our riders to a degree. And that information is shown in the table figure 2 of the report that showed the breakdown of our ridership. And what we found was it wasn't as high a minority proportion if you use the bus ridership as if we took the quarter mile population that lives around where each of the bus stops are, where you could be getting on and off the bus and making use of the service.
I see what you're saying.
See what
Yeah,
I'm
thank
saying?
you for explaining that. I was a little bit confused about that. I guess my issue with this is just that, like you pointed out, the commuter route just it's fundamentally different than these
Mhm.
routes that are operating more in urban areas,
Right.
stopping more, but in another way than the one that you pointed out, because a commuter route is functioning basically as a hub where people aren't just coming from a short while around. They're coming from like all of Stockton. If they need to get from Stockton to Modesto, they're kind of coming from the whole city potentially through other means of transportation, other routes, right?
Right.
And so to me it doesn't necessarily seem like that's an accurate way to capture the actual population being served. And like so and to that point, it seems like that's I'm not sure if the current methodology has accurately captured the real potential disparate impact of the change in a route that's like this.
And I can't disagree with you because it's hard to figure out how else we can capture it. And the next item, one of the things that's analyzed in looking at whether to keep the route or not is looking at how the route's performed and more about the surveys and what it showed about where the riders come from and what they do. It's I feel that we tried two ways of looking at it. We tried and we opted to choose the way that would have the stronger correlation and the disparity. And we did look at remedies with what's recommended, which whether or not it has a disparate impact or not, looking at solutions to provide transit service for either category of group is beneficial to them, right? So even if it didn't meet that test or the finding, we're still looking across it broadly. Does that make sense? Like, if we're looking at ways to provide even if it's the ACE or a van pool for people to be able to make this connection and that do this commute, the remedy we're looking at reaches broadly across the board, whether you're low income or you're from a minority community.
Yeah, and I like the idea of looking into other possibilities to mitigate basically the effects of closing this route. Um, I guess I was taking a look at some of those comments, and I guess that's also part of what had me concerned. It seems like a lot of folks aren't using this for commuting, just commuting. It seems like a lot of folks use it for all sorts of different things,
Right.
seeing their family, seeing their friends, uh, going to school, which I guess is definitely it could be commuting, but also it's not as regular of a schedule as that.
Right.
So I think I'm also just characterizing it as purely for commuting maybe belies some of the actual usages of this route. In a way, I guess I'm concerned that, so number one, I am still concerned that the methodology doesn't fully capture, and I don't have a better suggestion off the
Mhm.
top of my head, but I feel like honestly, I feel like it would be worth looking into more or alternate ways of doing the methodology for a commuter route like this, for something that again is so fundamentally different than the usual fixed route. For which the analysis makes more sense. Like for 33, it makes more sense. So I do think that's an issue. And I also think that in terms of, even if, I guess this is maybe getting a little bit ahead, but even if even if there still is no disparate impact or disproportionate burden, I would be concerned based on the feedback about closing the route, because it just seems like, and I guess my thought would be, and again, this might be getting ahead of ourselves, but to be making sure to get feedback. I'm not sure if the folks who left these comments also left contact information. I'm not sure if that was part of the way that was surveyed, but if there was a way to, for example, reach back out to some of them and maybe poll them about the different alternative options to see, number one, if they're even aware of them. Number two, if any of them sound feasible, or if there are big glaring concerns with them that we might not think of from our perspective, not being Stockton commuters
Mhm.
or Stockton people that people that frequently travel to Stockton via this
Mhm.
route. Um, yeah, I would see that as, this is definitely, I don't know, just given the amount of negative feedback toward closing the route, it seems like this would definitely need to be followed up with a lot more uh, public outreach to these folks and to other folks who use the route, in order to justify closing and to make sure that people aren't going to be really negatively affected by the closure of that route.
And your feedback is so appreciated. I would ask for you to think about it in two things. One being like the analysis here, right? Do we seem to have followed a methodology? And I understand your concerns with it. That's why I reached out to FTA Region 9, which serves our area, to their civil rights officer to get her advice on this. And she reviewed the report and the methodology, because I was concerned about how do you capture who can be a writer and what really is, and where you're stopping may not really capture a lot of people, like all the things you're talking about. And her advice was that the two ways we took more than one approach. We looked at it and we erred on the side of trying to find a larger approach, and that the key thing we were looking at was mitigation. So in terms of the statutory requirement of what we need to do for Title VI, if you would look at it that way, I think your comments and talking about the concerns of the route will really come into play on the next item. And for you to look at that, for us to look at that piece there and to be able to do, um, that it's never comfortable to think about changing service out with one group for another and creating, a sense of winners or losers in it. And we certainly are very sensitive to that. So thank you for the feedback.
Thank you.
Oh, one last thing on the outreach to writers, I did want to respond to that, is we have continued to provide outreach with putting out flyers, letting them know that there are the follow-up meetings, that they have this chance to be at our board meeting. The best thing to do is on bus, right? To be handing things out. It's all in English and Spanish. And that they were invited to this meeting, to the board meeting. We will continue to do more outreach in between now and then. And also we are continuing to meet with these fellow agencies to try to really make a more formal and a more thoughtful packet of information that can go to people to understand, based on whatever the board chooses, if they so agree to remove the route, what can be done to assist them with it. So just to let you know, we take that part seriously too and hear you.
Are there any more comments from the committee?
In terms of the methodology, the only thing that we have to look at for equity is minority population by ethnicity, non-white versus white, and then low income. Those are the only two categories.
Those are the two categories that are required by the FTA in Title VI that we look at. And Title VI only looks at ethnicity. And unfortunately, I'm limited in looking at, let me back up from that. In our area, it's predominantly Hispanic, Spanish-speaking community that we're dealing with. And so the American Community Survey, the data I can get through our GIS screening is there in American Community Survey is the interim annual updates that are done between census that are conducted every decade. So, and that's how they characterize who the community is that you're doing it, which I don't like. I don't have a great comfort level with just having that broad spectrum that we look at. And we were able with our report, on board to get a better understanding of the folks we were impacting. But those are the two categories that they require us to look at.
Okay.
Any more comments from the committee? Do you have any comments from the public?
Not sure if this is on. Is this on? Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, members of the SEEAC and San RTA staff. My name is Joel Campos. I am a senior regional planner at the San Joaquin Council of Governments, so a sister agency to StanCog. And I would like to coin myself in my own agency as a transit guy. And because anything my boss wants to know on transit, they come to me. And but I'm here humbly talking to you all this afternoon as a writer of Route 80. And yeah, I just want to share a couple things. I'll be brief, but basically, the bottom line up front is that there are no other options for these folks that travel with me on this bus. So there currently, as you heard, there are no RTD or Manteca connections at the Lathrop ACE station. And Ripon and Ripon only offers bus twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and is very limited. I think there's only like 3 routes. And it goes to the mall, and for folks can go do their laps around the mall. Escalon, their service ends at 3 p.m. and it's very limited service. And Escalon is not the direction of Stockton. I work in downtown. This would have huge impacts on, we know what the demographics of Stockton are and Modesto. It's largely minority populations. I'm Latino, but in Stockton, large Black and Filipino populations as well. And so this would have huge impacts. I would be definitely a loser in this case because, again, there are no other options. ACE travels south to the Bay Area, one direction in the mornings, and north, one direction in the afternoons. Amtrak, I have the Amtrak route right now. If Amtrak was an option, I would use it. And I have used it in cases where the bus leaves Stockton at 6 p.m. and I needed to leave for a family emergency, so I left at 3. Even though I get off at 4:30, I wait an hour and a half for this Route 80, and I do it with other riders weekly. But I had to leave early, and one time I left and I took an Uber to the Amtrak station in downtown Stockton at 3 p.m. and I got there. I bought my ticket. And the train was delayed 4 hours because they hit someone in Antioch on the way into the Central Valley. So it is not a reliable service. Amtrak is not a commuter service. It's a long passenger rail system. And so the only things I would say is that also I looked at your KPIs from October and June 30th, so I can get a full year. It is not the lowest performing route. I know that's not why they're comparing the two. They're trying to find the 2 similar routes, but it's not the lowest performing route. The lowest performing route is Route 100, the Turlock-Patterson bar commuter. I don't want any commuter service cut, but I'm just letting you know that it is not the lowest performing route. I travel with many different folks. You're right. They don't go there just to work. Folks with adult disabilities, low-income people. I saw a man where his wife left him. She had 3 kids and she was leaving him. And he traveled with them to Stockton from Modesto, got underneath the bus, took off the car seats, all their bags of clothes, and he hugged his kids goodbye. And so that was the only option. He had to travel with them on the bus as she was leaving him, his wife. And that was the only option they had. And so that was a very emotional. It happened a couple weeks ago, actually. The only thing I would say is please consider maybe truncating the 33, like was mentioned, and returning it back. Maybe that's a smaller trip. Also, asking MJC to potentially help fund that extension. And then also, we're even willing to increase the fares. It's only $2. Charge us more. That's a bargain. So that's it. And then also, StanCog does have a variety of funding sources. One is call for projects, $4.8 million. The deadline to apply is tomorrow. But if they knew this was an issue, maybe going forward to look for other funding sources. Thank you.
We appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments from the public? Again, I'd like to remind you that we're limited on time, and so if you could please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Mine's a quick thing, and part of it's educational. This is, I just want to mention, this is kind of an emergency thing. The idea is this is in the middle of a planning cycle, and so I want everyone to understand. I think Ms. Swanson did emphasize that we don't want to make any changes in revenue hours, but there was kind of this emergency need for to supplement the Pirate Express. So for those expressed interest that the 33 should actually do a little more, yeah, Stan RTA is trying to do the minimum to at least connect the two campuses. That was the #1 priority. The staff can verify this, but I'm pretty sure for the long term, we do want service coming through downtown and service coming through the west side in the long run as we plan for future years. So I'm not trying to be apologetic. I'm just saying this is the reality of what we're dealing with right now. It's not a perfect solution, but it'll do. Route 80, I have a question for Ms. Swanson. What are the connections between Manteca? Does the Manteca bus service connect to the mall, or is that are there connections or no? I'm not sure I know anything about that.
Manteca does not come into Stanislaus County. Mr. Herrera, would you like to comment a little bit more on it? Unfortunately, our primary planner that's been looking at these alternatives and working with Manteca and SJRTD was unable to attend today due to a family emergency. But so Manteca does not come into the county. We are looking, they do have shuttles that go out to of course, within Manteca at the transit center. So we could take the ACE bus and have it stop in Manteca on its way to Lathrop. So we could add that stop and meet up with them to
Okay.
help with circulation through the Manteca community onto
Okay.
the ACE, which is one run in the morning that would match up with, and then several in the afternoon. And then in Lathrop, the SJRTD, I
Right.
believe it's their shuttle 91 and 95. But again, I apologize for not being expert
Yeah,
on that.
that's right. Okay. I was just wondering because one of the things I was thinking, I don't know if it'll cut that many revenue hours, but if the Stockton Express did not need to stop in Manteca, that people could get ways to Manteca, and that would cut. It wouldn't maybe be enough compared to what 33 would be adding, but it's just, trim here, trim there. It's just an idea. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments from the public? Well, with no other comments, we'll continue with our agenda.
But we have one online.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No comment.
Okay, with that, we'll continue with our agenda. Okay. Gonna do-
I would motion that we separate.
What you would be looking for is a motion to recommend to the board, because remember, as SEEAC, you make a recommendation to the board to take the action, right? So it'll be a motion to recommend the board of directors approve by resolution the route, let's take route 81st, service equity analysis of for the proposed January 2025 fixed route service change.
Okay.
Route 80 is the first one. That's the one being proposed for elimination.
Okay, so my motion to the board would be is to not end this route now.
All right, so you're moving, well, so we're not looking at the route now, we're looking at the equity analysis. If you find that if you don't have a problem with the analysis, you may not want to cancel the route, but it would be, do you find the conclusions to be valid?
Maybe you can.
Yeah, maybe Adam could do that.
Let me, maybe I can try to help explain here. So there's two different items. So 6A, the one that we're talking about right now, is the equity analysis that Angela and the Standard T staff have done. So it's purely, right now, this item, this action would only be to accept that the analysis was done appropriately, accurately. It's just information. The next item in 6B is where you would then, Angela will talk about the pros service changes, and then you could take an action to support or not the proposed service change, proposed service changes. This is only to accept the analysis.
Okay.
I do have a clarifying question about the first. So does approving of the analysis also entail approving of the methodology that was used for the analysis?
Yes, that would be part of it, but not, obviously, it would, it's just information that supports the service change, which you could ultimately say, no, we don't want to do that if that's the direction that the committee wants to go, or way you want to go. This is really just to approve the analysis and the methodology in which was used to get to the conclusion.
Okay, so I would oppose the analysis. We need to look at a different view. So, yeah, I would oppose the analysis.
I second.
And this is just for the Route 80?
Okay, so if I'm just gonna ask, so I understand that you are not in support of making the recommendation to the board to approve the findings that were contained in the equity analysis. And right now we're talking specifically about Route 80, which is the commuter route. So the way we have it written on the agenda is a motion to recommend approval.
Okay.
So if you want to vote no, is there anyone, so the way we would accomplish that without making a motion in favor is, well, make a motion in favor, get a second in favor, and then if you're opposed, you could vote no, right? And so if the members of the committee present vote no, the motion would fail, so it would result in a non-recommendation, basically.
No.
It's the way we phrased it on the agenda. So we would need a motion to approve, a second to approve, and then if you are not supportive of the analysis, you would vote no.
Okay. But to clarify now, if maybe I'm mistaken, if I was to motion approve it, then I don't think it's against that.
And just putting forward the motion is just a parliamentary action. It's not a statement of support.
Yeah, that's so. Okay, so a motion to put it to the floor for a vote. The analysis.
Okay, is there anyone who would like to second? Thank you. And so then if you want to call for the roll or all the vote.
Okay, can we call for a vote? For all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. No. Opposed.
And this, again, so this is,
Roll call.
Yeah, Valerie, can we?
Yeah,
get a
we'll do
roll
an
call?
individual roll call.
All those in favor for roll?
Roll.
Okay,
Okay, so we'll vote for or against. So Michael Wood,
This is against?
Against.
Against, yes.
Jacinta Parker,
opposed.
Vernon Snodderly,
No.
Nick Jensen.
No.
Stephen Evans,
No.
Hannah Brady,
Yes.
Mohammed Rashid.
No.
The motion is recommended to not.
Thank you.
So, and just so to clarify, thank you for that. So we had 6 against, 1 in favor. So that means that there will not be a recommendation to the board for approval. That was a double negative.
And Monica, could you help us with the next motion?
Yeah, so again, this would be the same because the way we've written it, it is a recommendation to approve. So again, we would need a motion and a second to approve. We can do it by roll call vote. If you do support the recommendation for the equity analysis for Route 33, you would signify by saying yes when your name is called. If you do not support the findings in the equity analysis, you would say no when your name is called. So again, we would need a motion and a second in favor. But then again, if you are not supportive when your name is called, you would signify by saying no.
I would motion a yes for the 33 analysis.
I'll second it.
We have roll.
Yes. Michael Wood,
Yes.
Jacinta Parker,
Yes.
Vernon Snodderly,
Yes.
Nick Jensen,
Yes.
Stephen Evans,
Yes.
Hannah Brady,
Yes.
Mohammed Rashid.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Yes, so thank you. So the board will be notified that there was a recommendation from this committee to approve the findings for the service equity analysis for Route 33, but there was not not similar support for the analysis for Route 80.
Oh, okay. Next item is item 6B. The resolution to propose the January 2025 fixed route service change.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take this item again. So we'll go into this. And again, we know where we're at with things you'll do, but I'll dive a little deeper into the presentation with this one. Next slide. So we've already talked about what a service change is, so I'll move on. Talking about Route 33's expansion. And again, I'll go through some of this because we've delved into this a little bit. So we did the comprehensive operational analysis in 2022, and it discontinued the route I'd mentioned before that had gone across. That was Route 36. We are looking at restoring it. It's been a top goal. It was one of the few mistakes we found we made on the COA, and it was a mistake to eliminate that crossing of 99. And then Pirate Express, you're aware of. Next. So in the rationale, we have had many requests, and we wanted to emphasize that although we talk about the Pirate Express, and that really pushed this up for a mid-year change, we had already seen that there was a lack of connection from the west side of the highway to the Kearney Post Office, to drug testing centers, to other Social Security that people needed. At this point now, they have to go from the west side south to the transit center, switch routes, and then come up north again. And that was proving very onerous for folks. It also affected group homes and day programs that you were used to being able to go across and then connect up to go to the mall and to other points throughout Modesto. And so again, they were, with their limited time, having to spend a lot of extra time on the bus. It's a 1.5 mile addition. We ran a pilot to test out through the month of October. It's called Route 34 that we initiated end of September, beginning of October. And that was to test, was there really demand for this? Because all we had was Modesto Junior College's data, and that was showing declining enrollment on the Pirate Express. And that was why they weren't operating it. So we wanted to see, would we even pick up any riders? And MJC agreed to underwrite the cost of us providing that service through the fall to see what was happening with it. Next slide. This again shows you where we're suggesting the ads. Additionally, the round dots show you where bus stops are being added. We're adding a number of bus stops, so it's not just purely for the benefit of connecting the two college campuses, that we are picking up more stops along the route, including going up to the top of Blue Gum along Granite Lane, at Granite Lane and Carpenter and those areas. So we're adding about 6 stops to the route in supporting the community writ large. Next, and the other thing to mention was we picked up 1,400 riders on the service alone in the first month of October with no promotion of the service. So that was a significant number of riders. Next. So now let's take a look at Route 80's data. Next. So we talked about why it was initiated. It is the lowest of the commuter services in the sense between BART and ACE. Patterson BART meets up with the Modesto BART, so we've linked those together because they are an integrated BART service. And commuter service is more costly to operate per passenger than fixed route service is. Next. And then again, showing you the route on how far we go with the service. We do 2 round trips in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, and it's low income and Hispanic. Next. And then this is showing the Route 80 ridership, just to give you an idea of what we have happening. So ridership has definitely grown on this service. And this shows you 3,400 coming out of COVID, 5,200, 8,300 for a year with the trips. And I did this based on 20 trips a month, being very conservative in how many times it's more often Monday through Friday is about 22 days in a month, but about 695 average riders in a month is all we carry on this, which is about 6 people per trip each direction. So it's a relatively low ridership when you think about those big, huge coach buses that can hold 80 passengers. Next. And then we compared the ridership gains and what's happening and how does this look compared to other commuters? Because one of the measures is how well is this caught on? We were looking all the time to try to get to something like the productivity we see on BART. BART far and away higher ridership, and the 24 is the bottom number. And so Stockton has grown, but it's still not reaching the numbers of the other services we're providing. The ACE service, we should know, will be automatically going away when the ACE train comes here. And this is part of a regional connection promise we've made to support those that use ACE while we're waiting for the ACE train to arrive to Modesto, but that'll be gone in the next couple of years. So that's already in our planning to go away. Next. We did survey the passengers on Route 80 because we didn't know a lot about them. And so we looked at it. We found in a week of having a person on the bus the whole time surveying that we had 80 unique riders, which was a higher number than we expected to see based on the trip ratios. Their primary purpose was to go to work or to school. 62% of the riders do not live in our county. They come to our county from Stanislaus or elsewhere. And 67% of the riders do, wherever they come from, they use it 3 to 4 times a week. So we have high frequency, so we know that it's their primary form of transportation. But again, this shows you the responses where people lived. We found most people lived actually in San Joaquin County, either in the Manteca area or in Stockton, which was very surprising to us. We had no idea that was what was going on. Stanislaus County was 3. We had a few kind of wild cards that came up in the survey. Next. Options for service cuts. So we were looking at, could we do something else? Next, there we go. So we looked at, should we be comparing it to a fixed route? Because while commuter routes are different, it's not unreasonable to say, is there somewhere else, or how is this route performing? Because it has seen an increase in ridership. When we looked at our 3 lowest performing routes, 24 is a new route, 61 connects Houston with to the system and into Ceres. And then the 45 is our west side route that is the one route that we have really running, connecting Newman and Patterson with the rest of the county. These alone are at 17,000, 28,000, and 26,000. So here, whether it was be to cut the number of rides, number of trips, or making other service changes, it's really hard to justify trying to take those out or down when we already are seeing that level of ridership going on with them in our planning estimation. Next. So then again, we already talked about this a little bit about that we are looking at options to provide some sort of a safety net for those riders that would be impacted by this service. Next. So, the conclusion, I don't think really need to go through it because we've already been talking about doing it. We believe that a route that has already shown that it picked up over 1,400 riders in its first month of operation, this extension is showing very meaningful ridership need in the community. They're by and large Stanislaus County residents, which is our first priority in providing service. Even though we find, and we don't want to get rid of the Stockton commuter, but when we're looking at a mid-year planning change, is it the least impactful of all the choices we have that could be made? Next. So next steps, this is a reminder, this is a retread of a presentation that we used when we did 2 community outreach meetings last week. So we've been reminding people, we have this all posted on our website. We have been doing outreach directly on the buses. There are car cards on every one of our route buses where we're talking about it. We've done in-person and Zoom videos. We are encouraging everyone to post a comment using our app at the website, call customer service. And then folks have been invited to this meeting and to the Board of Directors meeting to make their voices heard. We appreciate there's room at the table for everyone's opinion here, and we welcome it. Next. And then this is the timeline for what we see happening with the services. Next. And then in this case, I'm wearing my civil rights officer hat, so I'm a point of contact for any questions. And Madam Chair, I'll turn that over to you.
Do we have any comments from the committee?
I guess I'm just wondering, so, I mean, obviously, so with respect to Route 80, clearly options have been, considered for what to replace it with. I'm wondering if there have been any options considered or what even options could be possible for just reducing the actual cost of running it. I mean, one thing was brought up by the gentleman from, Stockton, the idea that people might be willing to pay more. And so I'm wondering if like a small fare increase, obviously, maybe an equity analysis would have to be done if that was large, right? But fare increase, this might sound stupid, but smaller buses or smaller vehicle, if there is, depending on like, I don't know how it shakes out, but given that you said that there was recently an average of 6 people, if that shakes out in a way that would allow for the use of a smaller vehicle, I'm wondering if that would reduce costs or if that would be the kind of thing that could be considered, um, depending on what it actually looks like ridership looks like. And the other thing I was thinking of was, I guess, especially considering that so much of the population that uses that route is from San Joaquin County, I'm wondering if coordination with uh, county agencies, or I'm not sure what the transit situation is like. I'm sure this gentleman knows what the transit situation is like in San Joaquin County, but yeah, I'm wondering if coordination with some of those agencies, either I don't know about cost sharing, but in some way to collaborate to keep this route in place might be something that would be possible. Because it seems like, I mean, a lot of people still seem to be benefiting from it, an increasing number since the pandemic. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. I'm not sure if any of that's been considered yet.
I think we'll defer to Mr. Barth for some responses on the good points brought up by Mr. Jensen.
Great, thanks, thank you, Mr. Jensen. Angela, I did look at the idea of the costs to run the system and what those costs would be. Would it be cheaper to operate a smaller vehicle? Generally, no, it's not. The driver is the same cost regardless of the size of the vehicle that they drive, and so those costs are set. There may be a little bit of reduction in fuel costs. It's not significant. The cost per mile for maintenance is about the same for our system, because we do have a large fleet of ADA paratransit vehicles, obviously a smaller vehicle. Angela, I looked at those costs and found that they're not any cheaper. So even though it looks and feels like it would be cheaper to run a smaller van, it's not when you look at it in the full scheme of things. A fare increase is an option for sure. That would take additional time, and as you mentioned, it would take a fare equity analysis. If you remember back a presentation ago and some slides ago, there was a fare equity analysis that we would have to do and propose that would take some time to do. Definitely an option that we could consider for sure. And then the coordination with other agencies, definitely that's something that we're doing now with SGRTD, with Manteca Transit, to see if there's options there. So we have reached out, talking with them, but nothing has bubbled up yet. So know that we're trying, but it's not, we don't have anything yet to say, yes, this is a good answer, a good solution to the problem.
We are actually scheduled to meet with them next week.
Thanks, Ed.
And then on, not particularly germane to what you all are being asked to look at, but MJC is a contributing partner to STAN RTA through already covering fares for their students, that they provide a subsidy so that students can provide free annually, and could on a limited basis participate to some degree to help with this, but they can't afford my shorthand for it is called pay to play. You can't, to extend a service that's good for the whole general public, expect one agency that's benefited by it to cover the cost for adding what we need for Route 33. And because they're already a contributing partner, as I said, like with the Pirate Express, and realizing that there was this huge need apparently that was created, that they have been willing to help us with it, so that, I just don't want to not disclose that portion of it. But that ability to provide it, for instance, we don't, charge the county for going to the community services agency or by probation, or much less going by, schools and businesses. So that's where there's a limitation on what we can expect from that, even though I really appreciate that that was brought up earlier as an alternative. And we have talked to them about timing of this route could be impacted, by having to do it with the mid-year budget adjustment.
Any more comments?
I have a bunch. So the main things that are kind of like percolating in my head is kind of the difficulty of this decision in terms of like, what is the mission of Stan RTA?
Mhm.
You kind of hinted on that like we are here to serve the residents of Stanislaus County first and foremost. And also knowing that that's an imperfect system, because the residents of Stanislaus County have needs that exist outside of the county and require transportation to get there. And again, what Nick was kind of saying, like, what are we doing as an agency substantially to coordinate with other counties? Is that one of our mission points also is to be a better partner in Central Valley for in the Central Valley for transportation? Because it sounds like right now we're facilitating this service that crosses two counties. I can't picture that in my head. Ours and theirs, and then, we start going out to Lathrop, that gets even further out, and we're paying for it entirely. Route 80 is something that Stan is paying for. So that's imperfect and unjust in its own way. But the thing that I think we can control the best right now is actually the timeline. Because if we're talking about a Jan 1 service change, because I can zoom out and see that this might be the decision that affects the least amount of riders. And that's a terrible decision to have to make. But if we're telling people today that they need to find transportation alternatives for their jobs and their families and their caregiving commitments and their doctors and everything by December 1st, that's not enough time. I would assume they would need a longer runway to make substantial changes, requesting remote work approvals from their bosses, or searching alternate employment. We know those are decisions people have to make in their personal lives, but as a public facing agency, we can give them time to make those decisions instead of an under 2-month turnaround. So those are the three things that I see in kind of intention.
Are there any more comments from the committee? Now, do we have any comments from the public regarding this?
Thank you. You all know who I am. I'll be shorter. By the way, born and raised in Modesto. I live in Modesto with my wife, my 2 daughters, 8-year-old, 4-year-old, and I take the Route 80. First off, I just want to say, based on the KPIs from last FY, the full FY, this bus transported 7,500 people. Route 100 only transported 1,600 people. That's 6,000 people less last year. So this is not the lowest performing route. It's Route 100. Second of all, you were asking to choose between low income minority communities and students. That sucks. And so I hear you. And so I would just reiterate, consider raising fares. here's Route 33 that the gentleman was on the committee was talking about earlier, and maybe reconfiguring it to shorten Route 33, but that still meets the needs of both campuses. That's the old Route 33 that was changed. Secondly, if people in San Joaquin, where I do work, I had to borrow a car to be able to make sure that I got to this meeting today because I ride the bus. I borrowed a car today so that I could be here, and then I need to go give it back. And yeah, that's my day today. 62% come from San Joaquin. Leverage that. There's two urbanized areas, Manteca UZA and Stockton UZA. So if Stockton is not participating, at least go into the Manteca UZA, see if you can seek funding from there, because you guys are contributing to their Section 5307 funds. You guys are already contributing because there's a 2-year lag. I'll probably get in trouble for that from my bosses, but this is my bus. And so you guys are already contributing to FTA 5307. And so the other thing is, yeah, this helps people get the jobs. We know jobs in Central Valley is tough for our residents to get to, and this helps that. So I can go on for days, but I just want to leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments from the public? With no more comments, would we like a motion?
I guess I would want to see, so with respect to this motion, so will this be a motion to approve or to recommend?
Yes, and you can break them apart by each route so that you can move to recommend. So it's giving your voice to the board on whether you think the recommended change to Route 33 and the recommended change to Route 80 are good choices for them to make.
Okay, I guess just one more thing I wanted to bring. I said this a little bit earlier, but I want to say it under this agenda item as well. I get like for me, like I wouldn't. I mean, we'll get to this, but I wouldn't approve the change to Route 80, partly because I just don't think. I think more outreach would be needed before any type of conclusion could be made. I like what you said about the timeline. I think just the idea of like how quickly the turnaround would be just feels like it would not be fair to people. So like just like at bare minimum, it seems to me that there should be more outreach and more understanding of like how viable, if at all, some of those alternative options would be would need to happen before I would be personally. I guess I would be comfortable approving like a change route.
Are you indicating a desire to bifurcate the motions?
Yes. Nice. All right. Do I have to say anything else to do that? All right.
Although, sorry, aren't they kind of related to each other? I mean, I guess we could approve one, but the other one can't happen if we don't have the money. Like they're
The
kind of
board
linked.
always has the option, of course, to send staff back and stopping both or looking, and it gives them a feeling and directing us on what they want to do.
And this is also just a recommendation, so we're not like making an approval like the way the board would, right? So
No, but I will tell you that this committee has taken, as you saw, we had another board member that was in here. We've had one that's been listening in today. They do value and take into account that the effort that this and energy this group puts into being good stewards. So it is listened to. Mr. You want to help our chair with the motion?
Okay, so do you want, I'll ask you, Mr. Jensen, would you like to start with 80 or 33?
we can start with 80.
So then we would be, because of the way the wording is on the agenda, we would be looking for a motion to approve the service cut essentially to Route 80. We would need a motion and a second in favor. Again, when the clerk calls the roll, a yes vote would be supportive of cutting the service. A no vote would be against cutting the service. So, Mr. Jensen, I'll take you as the maker of that motion. And then we'll need a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you. And so now we'll, again, a yes vote would be you are in favor of eliminating the route. A no vote would mean you are not in favor of eliminating the route.
Michael Wood,
No.
Jacinta Parker,
No.
Vernon Snodderly,
No.
Nick Jensen,
No.
Stephen Evans,
No.
Hannah Brady,
No.
Mohammed Rashid.
No.
Motion does not.
So then the board will be notified that this committee did not recommend elimination of Route 80. So the next motion, based on the way it's provided on the agenda, would be a motion to approve the service change to Route 33, which would be the extension of that service. And so if you are in favor of the extension of 33, you would signify by saying yes. If you are not in favor, you would signify by saying no. And so again, we would be looking for a first and a second on that motion.
I will motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Michael Wood,
No.
Jacinta Parker,
Yes.
Vernon Snodderly,
Yes.
Nick Jensen,
Yes.
Stephen Evans,
Yes.
Hannah Brady,
Yes.
Mohammed Rashid.
No.
Yes, we have a 5-7 vote for yes, motion does pass. I'm sorry, 5-2.
So the board will be notified that this committee did recommend the extension of the Route 33.
Moving on. Next on our agenda is discussion of the 2024 fixed route passenger survey results.
Right, I will take this item. We'll move on. Next slide, please, James. And I know we're already running late, so I'll abbreviate, move quickly. Your packets have all of the survey data and results to do. This is our third year doing the survey. And I'll just pick, maybe if with the indulgence of the committee, just pick some of the highlight things to touch on and not go through everything. All right, next slide. So this is a survey we do because it is a requirement of Title VI to know, to have good data on the public that we serve. It also helps us learn more about the characteristics of our riders. And again, data used in this also gets drawn into the other kinds of analyses that we do throughout the year. It also really informs our planning services and gives the rider a voice. Next slide. So it's a statistically valid survey that we do, plus or minus, the standard 95 percentile, 5% error of margin of error. We needed a minimum of 385 surveys. We actually gathered 758 surveys. We also opened it up and left it open to see because we've been told the public would like to do it online, and we did find that got 4 extra surveys that way. So there wasn't a lot that came from us broadcasting it across the community. However, the more input, the better. And we did proportionally survey every route to make sure we got at least the minimal number of surveys per route. And then we were able to disaggregate it and do all sorts of fun egghead things. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about what we've learned about our riders. And this is consistent, the data that we've gotten. This on again, because I just like a whiteboard. All right, so as we're looking at it, we've seen that we're very split across the board. You don't see that we're a commuter service, that we're just for student support, seniors. It's really across the board. It's 35 to 54-year-olds are our highest number of riders. The purple is the 2024 data. So we serve the bottom line, we serve the whole community. Next slide. Household income, it remains startlingly as you take a look at it. With the numbers, this is all for a house at the federal poverty level. This is the lion's share of our ridership. It's over 70%. And even as you move this way with higher incomes and we get a few people, we actually I like putting this 125,000 plus just to prove some people do ride the bus from higher income levels, that it does spread across. But primarily we are a needs-based service with what our riders' income level is. Next. Employment status. So what we've seen again, in this blue is 2024, full-time employment, part-time retired student unemployment, very high with our numbers that we're looking at. So again, these are folks that need to use our service for what they do. We are a little bit higher than 100% because you could be unemployed and characterize yourself as a student as well, or part-time and a student. So we allowed some overlapping going on with it. But again, that we really find that we are a low-income, community-based service that deals with folks that need our support getting to their work. Next. Where are you going? Work, school, shopping, the core activities people need to do along the way, and then healthcare. I mean, not a surprise to see, but again, it really shows we are not like you might find in a more urbanized or suburban area where people are primarily going to work or to school and the other choices drop off a lot. It's very consistent. Next. Ethnicity. What we have found very much in keeping with the population in Stanislaus County is the breakdown that you're either white, non-Hispanic, Latino, or you identify as Hispanic or Latino with a breakdown. Key thing to learn is that 27.3% of our writers surveyed indicated they speak Spanish in the home. It may not be their primary language, but that's an important piece with us. We already translate basically all of our materials into English and Spanish, and that this is something that we need to continue to do. And 9.6% had limited to no English skills. Again, showing how important it is. I don't know if you've noticed, but little things we've done, like our head signs, are now in Spanish and English on all of our buses going around town, which is a nod to some of this with what we need to be doing to communicate well with our writing public. Next. Transit habits. This was the most significant piece for the planning nerds at the agency and the whole agency, is that over 79% of our riders have to take 2 buses to get where they're going. Sometimes that may be getting on a BART bus or the BART or the ACE train, but most often it means getting around town or getting in and out of Turlock. So this is telling us that people don't just need to come downtown to the transit center where most everything we're doing comes back and forth. They're needing to go across the region more. This is insightful and will be part of our major planning efforts going forward in the next 2 years, is looking and understanding better where are you connecting to and doing, so that, for instance, we may need to route more service into the mall or to the Amtrak station or somewhere along McHenry that might be a vital place where routes could link up and more efficiently and quickly move people from their first trip to their second trip. Riding 2 buses is not bad. Riding a bus 1.5 miles in the direction you don't need to go to transfer to another bus, wait 20 minutes for that bus and then to take it, that's where transit loses its effectiveness and makes a hardship for the rider. That's what this is telling us we can work on as our next phase of improving service. Next. Fare payment, almost everyone, of course, for $2, you pay your fare, $2, then you would get a day pass. So you either start with a day pass or 60% do that, so it's cash and carry as our crowd. 41% of our riders use the senior disabled discount. That also tells you a little bit more about our ridership. And then 14% use the 31-day pass. That's typically we find issued by social service agencies and community organizations to riders. Next. And how often do you ride? 3 to 7 days a week by far, 70% in this year. So again, that's telling you this is primary mode of transportation. So when you were asking earlier, Ms. Brady, about kind of knowing our mission, some of this data really reinforces some of what we have inferred our mission is, and that really shows us on who we're really supporting. Next. And what places are you going to? So we already covered some of this. And then where do you get your information? We always like knowing. One of the things that was helpful, knowing, oh, I'm sorry that I don't know why that did that, but it's about 82% of our writers have smartphones. Whether they use it as a smartphone, many of them don't. But that does tell us, and this is giving us feedback about where we should be pushing information out onto the web and letting people know what's going on. Next. Customer satisfaction. So overall, you want to be great or good. So we're looking at blue and red, and that takes us up pretty firmly at about the 80% level. So overall, there's nowhere where we're failing badly, and we're doing pretty well in lots of places. So we just look forward to improving on it. Next. And then requests. We always ask people, what is on your wish list? People generally want us to start earlier in the morning or run later at night, which makes sense, especially some of our more rural routes that stop operating, at around dark, around 6, 7 o'clock at night. More weekend service because our frequency goes down, especially on Sundays. So if we could operate more. They would like to see that. And then we found that it was a small group, but there was a concern about safety at bus stops or on the bus, primarily at bus stops. And so that's something that we're looking to continue doing capital improvements on to add lighting. Lighting is a real problem for us in many bus transit agencies because people steal the copper and the wiring. They actually steal the solar lighting. So it's almost impossible for us to keep shelters lit. We're working a lot on co-locating our shelters where there's already street lights or lighting off buildings that we can take advantage of to make our bus stops safer because it's such a challenge for us to keep them well lit. But we take it to heart and know we need to be doing this. Next. Takeaways. I think I've kind of covered all these pieces. We are pleased to be able to be providing a vital service to our community and take seriously that we continually have more to learn to keep doing a better job. Next. So are there any questions or comments people would like to share about the survey? Any surprises? Right, that's all, madam. Oh,
This actually might be a little bit of a tangent, so let me know if you'd rather talk about this outside of the meeting. Just with respect to the bus stop capital improvements you mentioned, I was just wondering, is there like a specific funding source that y'all use for that? And is there a prioritization strategy that you have for determining which ones get like funded first?
Sure. So bus stop improvements are funded by local transportation funds. It's just the funding source that we can use. There is a variety of different funding sources, but just when we go through the budgeting process, it's called the local transportation fund (LTF) source from those. We do have a bus stop improvement plan as well that was done a few years ago that prioritizes bus stop improvements based on ridership and a lot of other elements as well, not just how many people use the bus stop. But there's other elements that we look at when we do improvements at bus stops. So that's something we could probably take offline and talk with you more about.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And I guess I would like to request maybe if it would make sense at some point to like, if we could hear about that, because I feel like there's equity considerations in terms of which ones get prioritized and where they are, you know? So just wanted to put that out there.
I had two comments. One, I was interested also that the majority of households were single person households. That's what we see a lot with older adults also. And kind of proves the point that like people who lack community traditional social supports are really relying on public transit, and that's the way that they engage with the outside world, getting out there, and how like hugely important that is also. And then I had a thought that we might in the future add to the unemployment, like something along the lines of like permanently disabled or medically disabled, something like that, because they're neither. Some people are not, working, student, or unemployed. They don't have the ability to access employment in that traditional way. So like maybe a third, or just like an other category in general. Yeah.
Any comments from the committee? Do we have any comments from the public?
Yes, since I'm here, I might as well comment on that too. This is something different, but I will say interesting on the safety concerns. I use the park and ride at the mall. There's no like spot where to stand or sit at the park and ride in the mall. I mean, if you could just designate the riders, I've seen it where the buses kind of just whoop in, and I'm like, oh, like good. I mean, I'm not saying they're bad drivers at all. I think you guys are offering great service, but it's dark right now in the morning and at night, and it's like, where am I supposed to stand? You know what I mean? Also, too, like if it's also kind of the rider's fault because they're either like in their car because it's cold or they're not standing in the right spot. And so it's like bus driver might miss them, but if there's a designated spot at the park and ride, it's like, oh, they're not sitting there. Okay, now I can leave. You know what I mean? Well, and then also too, there's no sidewalk. Like you're just in the parking lot, and then you cross that little inner ring of the mall, and like so when we're trying to walk from the park and ride to like the food court area, there's no, it's not really pedestrian friendly is what I'm trying to say. So if you guys can get with the mall and see if we can figure something out. Thanks.
There actually is a stop. I saw it the other day. It's hidden.
Oh,
Right between stalls. So we are working on redesigning that sign to make it more,
oh, at the park and ride? There's a stand right here thing? Oh, I didn't even know
not
that.
even a stand right here. It's just hidden between two parking stalls.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
we're working on it.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Are there any other public comments?
Hi, I'm Khalid Rashid. I'm the systems change advocate with Drail. I wanted to ask about if there was a question that you guys could add to the survey going on about disabilities and saying, asking if they have a disability. And also, I came in late for the meeting and about the route between San Joaquin and Stanislaus County. And that's a big deal also with the survey. If we could also ask if they want commuter rides through between counties and stuff, because it's a big deal with our consumers. We serve consumers because we're designated for San Joaquin and Stanislaus County. And a lot of our consumers want to come to Stanislaus County, but the rides are either in the morning or afternoon, or they have to spend the whole day in one of the other counties and they can't come home earlier. So it is a big deal. Thank you.
Yeah. If we don't have any other comments, we're going to move on. The next item is the 6D Series Multimodal Hub.
This is really quick. A quick look for everybody.
We have been talking briefly about the planning where and again, it was alluded to in the survey with the 2-seat rides. And we currently have 6 routes now that go into Ceres and circulate around the Ceres Walmart. That again was a highly requested area to get transportation to. And right now, if any of you come shop along that area, across the street from Ceres along Service Road, it's actually 5 routes now that we've consolidated. But you'll sometimes have 5 40-foot buses parked along Service Road, just there on the side and trying to get in and out of traffic. It's not ideal for anybody, but it's what's available to us. So we have been on the hunt for sites. We've got it narrowed down. We're trying to move forward for the environmental review to pick up the site. But as part of that, we've got the first glimpse that you can see of what the projected multimodal hub will look like. And I'll tell you just a couple of quick things about it. It's an exciting thing to share with you. This is capital program money, which is different than operating fund money. So just as a note for that, we're not looking at this and instead of serving passengers. But so we need 2 points of entrance and exit set up on a site generally, because you don't want buses, and especially if you're thinking about the Ceres area around Service Road, Mitchell Road, and any major thoroughfares, right, to be making a left-hand turn where there's not a signal. So if you don't have a good signal light to let you make easy left and right turns, you want 2 points of access coming off and on a streets in the area so that you can have more circulation. So that's the first thing about it. So what we're showing, so on one way is, so buses can come in this way, they will circle around and come in to park right in here. And so this sets it up so that we actually have the parking for 6 stalls for buses to come in with off-street parking. It'll have a canopy, be similar to what we have at the Modesto Transit Center. It will also have infotainment boards, so that we'll have the display screens telling people when their bus is coming, going, where you can connect to and provide. So we have the capacity to serve 6 buses here, which is great. At one time. It doesn't mean we can't have more than 6. It's just they can't all be coming in at the same time. And then we have a small island that's set aside here, looking to the future, where you have Ubers and that first mile, last mile solution where you have small vehicles, or if a paratransit vehicle or a Medivan or some smaller vehicle needs to come in, we can park them and get them in and out here without them getting in the traffic zone for the big buses. This also provides some secured employee parking. We also provide here for a small transit center / cooling hub where people can come in and passengers can be out in climate controlled area. There'll also be a break room and bathrooms for the bus operators, as well as the public restroom, security station. We'll have a small kiosk area where people can buy tickets or take care of getting on and off the bus. This also provides some space in this area where we wouldn't operate it, but if someone wanted to operate like a Lime bike or an e-bike or scooters or some sort of related operation, they could have that kind of a zone as well. So that, again, that's another first mile, last mile solution. We also will be providing bike lockers so that people can securely store their bikes coming in and out of the area. We also allow a little bit of transit again. So with coming in this site in particular, where the public, if someone's coming in and parking to do any business, or needs any access, they're here and they're out of the way of the buses. So that's a very quick look, but we're really excited that it's starting to get a little bit real, looking at the desire. While the site will, once we have the final site and we can really start designing to it, it'll change. We are told by our design team that we need about 8 months to a year to get the plans finalized and completed. You need about 4 months to go out to bid, and this will need 8 months to 12, 14 months to do the construction, depending on when you start, because with the weight of our buses, there's a lot of concrete that gets poured in this and has to cure and set up to really have this operational. And that's very time consuming. And again, depending on what time of year we start the work. So it's on its way. Any comments? Anyway, so it's a positive thing that's coming our way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No comments, committee, public? Moving on.
I'm so sorry, just one. And you mentioned there's like a cooling center kind of a component to this?
You know, transit as agencies already, our buses are considered mobile cooling centers and taking people to cooling centers. But in designing it, and I like mentioning the cooling center part because SGR has had money for cooling centers and programs to try to expand it. So we're hoping to be able to get some grant funding to help underwrite it. But all during our operating hours on the days when they environmental calls it as the day that where we're providing the cooling and opening them, that this will become an available spot for people to shelter from the heat. And again, that's part of why that parking area is valuable, right? Because someone may want to come in from the neighboring area and just be inside and be cool, where there's, you know, restrooms and they can plug in and, you know, charge their devices and be safe.
Yeah, that's great. Happy to hear that.
Okay. Next item is item 6E, the passenger conduct policy revision update.
So this was just a written update to you that I don't see that there's a lot to share, but I wanted you to know it's not been forgotten or left behind. We are continuing to work and negotiate with the county sheriff's department to try to get them on board and to have an agreement with what it need, so we get better security and can improve our safety on the bus. We are also working with doing final safety meetings in conjunction with some federal rules that have come down about driver assaults and how we characterize them and work with that. So we're working through our due process to get that documented, dealt with, as well as getting this policy update. We expect to bring this back to you in January. And Mr. Herrera has been leading that effort.
Yeah, we are also working with Modesto Police Department with the issues we have with the transit centers.
Any comments, committee, public? Moving on. Item number 7, agency reports.
She's giving me a comment. I'm thinking about it. I don't know how to respond to it. Sorry, Angela.
We've had a couple of people call us up saying they've heard already.
Okay. Yeah. Shoot, I don't know what to. Now you're getting me flustered, Angela. So next week we have some staff, actually a lot of staff are going to the California Transit Association annual conference and expo, which is in San Jose. And the Standard TA submitted an application a couple months ago to become the agency of the year. And we were awarded that. So it's very cool. It's very awesome that Standard TA, I mean, it's great for everybody. It just goes to the great work of staff and really all the riders as well. I mean, the riders are what make the Standard TA a success with everybody on board the buses. And so it's an awesome, awesome honor to receive that. I hesitated because it's supposed to be a surprise, so don't say anything. Don't say anything. Uh, So but it's great. So I definitely appreciate the staff that made it happen, especially Angela, Simon, and April, who's not here, and then everybody that made this all happen. So it's awesome. So we'll have more to report and at the next SEAC meeting to see the pictures of that event. So. And that just thank you for the work here on the SEAC. It's been great to have the comments and the perspective, and I think that helps us better craft the routes for the riders out there, which are incredible. So, thank you for your time.
And any committee member reports?
One thing I'd like to mention, I've been riding, and I think I mentioned to Simon here earlier, you know, we've been riding the 22s on the Tenerife, and noticing, like today it was almost standing room only. So I would encourage them to either, you know, maybe in the future we can look at possibly putting in a 15-minute run on 22, or trying to get some, and I think maybe get some larger buses on that route. So that would hopefully resolve that problem.
Thank you. Mohammed?
I will be doing a round table with operators with fixed route and paratransit Thursday, the 21st, the 24th. Yeah, Sunday the 24th and Tuesday the 26th. At the bus maintenance facility. In regards to the ADA.
Great, thank you. Any other committee member reports? Okay, moving on. Well, that concludes our agenda for today. I will call to adjourn our meeting today at 3:43. Thank you, everyone, for attending and participating, and thank you to the public. We appreciate your comments and your participating.
And the next meeting is January 16th, which is third Thursday instead of the usual second Thursday, just due to the holidays. Yes, we are.
Thank you, everyone.